Okay, Met fans, welcome to episode 36 of Down on the Corner, the exclusive Zoom room show of KINER'S where you are part of the action. Tonight, we have a very special guest who's had really a truly unique and fascinating baseball journey. He was a hard-nosed, hustling baseball player whose career spanned 13 professional seasons, including parts of 10 years in the majors, 5 different teams, including 2 stints with our beloved New York Mets. He was a reliable outfielder with a really strong glove. He made a name for himself as a player who never took a play off, whether patrolling center field, pinch hitting a clutch moment, or giving his all in AAA to earn another shot at the bigs. He embodied the grind and passion that is baseball. We're excited to have Jim Gosger here with us tonight, share stories from his journey in the game. So, Jimmy, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mark. This is fun. I enjoy doing stuff like this.
This is
I,
going to be
I like
great.
talking baseball, from the time that I played. I had 13 years, I had 8 years in the big leagues, and the eight or best 13 years of my life. And it was one of my dad's wishes. And when I signed that first contract, I saw him in tears. I only saw him in
Hmm.
tears twice, once when his brother died and once when I signed that contract.
Wow. So
So that's
as always, guys, I'll start off the questions for Jim, and then during this time, we ask you to keep yourself muted until we turn it over to you guys, for you guys to ask some questions. For those of you that might not know all the details about Jim, let me give you a quick background. Jim Gosger was born in Port Huron, Michigan, and get this, he loves it so much there that he's still living in Port Huron, Michigan. Talk about loyalty. He was from a small town, American kid, playing every sport he could. He was a star athlete at St. Stephen High School, lettering in baseball, football, basketball, and track. In fact, he was an all-star guard in basketball, all-state halfback in football. So, Jim, I guess the first question is, where did your love of sports come from? And, looking at all the awards you got as a high school athlete, you probably could have made a career out of any of the sports. So, why baseball?
Well, when I'm going to say 5 years old, when we moved into this house, my dad got a ball and wanted to play catch with me all the time. And I would, every day we'd be out in the front yard and we'd play catch. And then when I was 8 years old, Little League began here in Port Huron. It had never been here before. And that was in 1950. And we had I got drafted or picked by one team, and I think we had, I don't know, probably 20 teams in the league. And there was different sponsors, like five teams in each bracket, and I got to play all the time. And my dad, he was there for every game. My dad and my mother, I had great parents. I mean, they were there for everything that I did. And then when I got into high school or grade school, I started playing basketball and playing football. My parents were always there. I was so darn lucky to have parents that cared, but they didn't never criticize anything that I did. My dad would come and pat me on the back. Hey, you did good. Even if I had a bad day, he'd come and pat me on the back. But one thing that I never forgot was we were at a Tiger ball game. I was 8 years old. They took me down and they were playing the Boston Red Sox. And Ted Williams was in left field. And we were down the left field line and we're sitting there. And my dad looked at me and he said, someday you're going to be out there. And I said, Dad, I'm 8 years old. He said, you'll be there. Lo and behold, I ended up signing with the Red Sox. Who do you think was my hitting instructor in spring training?
Ted
Ted Williams.
Williams.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh. It was such a thrill. And to be able to listen to him the way he taught how to hit. The good thing about it was you'd go in and take batting practice and he would come out and he wouldn't say anything when you're in batting practice. But when you come out, he'd say, let's try this. And I mean, that's the way he was, and it was so much fun for me to be able to be with this man, and he was so good about talking baseball. And it couldn't get any better.
It's absolutely amazing. Your second year of college is where you're signed by the Boston Red Sox, a scout by the name of Maurice Duluth. You're signed to Winston-Salem in the Carolina League. So, you go back to that day, where your dad tells you you're going to be out there, to the moment that you're now a professional baseball player and you're leaving home. What was that whole experience like for you?
I cried for 7 days. I'll be honest with you, Mark. I never left home. And when I went down there, you were just a number because they had everybody in the minor league system there, and there was 7 teams that they had to put the players in, starting out with the rookie league, and then they had A ball, or they had rookie A ball, double A, triple A, major leagues, and there's 3 different minor league teams. They had Pocatello, Idaho. They had Winston Salem, and I was projected when I signed the contract to go to Pocatello, Idaho, and they signed me to a contract of X amount of dollars, and then I got a progressive bonus. And my dad wondered, he says, "What does that mean?" And they said every time he moves up a step, he will get a bonus. So he says, "Well, where are you going to start him?" And he said, "Well, we're not going to start him in the rookie league. We're not going to start him in D ball. We're going to start him in C ball in Pocatello, Idaho." And Dad said, "Okay." So I get to spring training, and through the course of spring training, Ted Williams came up to me and said, "We're going to send you to Class B ball, which is in Winston-Salem." And I said, "Oh, okay." I did. He said, "We're going to send 5 rookies there. There's going to be you, Rico Petrocelli, Billy Molinas, Gage Nordane, and Jim Russin." So the 5 of us went to Winston-Salem, which was a step up. Beautiful. It was a great league. The traveling was great. The longest time that we spent in a bus was 3 hours. That was to Wilson, North Carolina. So it was a great league as far as playing. But the idea of playing in that classification, I was happy, and I had a good year. I
Yeah,
hit
you certainly did.
85 or something like that, and had 19 home runs. I wasn't a home run hitter, never. I was a line drive hitter. My dad taught me hit line drives. Don't try and hit the ball out of the park. And I was basically a line drive hitter. But playing in Winston-Salem, it was a short park, and it was hot all the time there. So the ball carried pretty good. So I was pretty lucky. Well, then at the end of the year, at that time under the major league contracts, if a team didn't protect you, you would go into the draft. So you were bound to that team, whoever you signed with, for the rest of your life. I mean, that's the way it was back then until Curt Flood changed everything. But when this happened, um, I get a call in the wintertime from the Red Sox, and they said, "You're going to be going to spring training in Scottsdale." And I said, "Okay, why?" He says, "Because we put you on the major league roster." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" It says, "It means that you're going to be with the Red Sox the whole year." And I thought, "Oh my gosh," you know. And my dad, he was excited as ever to go, and he went out to spring training with me. But the good thing about that was that I got all my bonuses. I got a bonus for being in C ball or B ball, A, double A, triple A, and the major leagues, plus my major league salary. So I got a pretty good bonus out of that. So I was lucky, and when I got to the big leagues, the manager calls me in the clubhouse and he says, "Here's what I want you to do. I want you to watch what's going on. Watch what's going on in Major League Baseball." And he says, "Learn from that." And I said, "Okay." So I sat there. I got into a few games defensively. I never got the hit until we come into Detroit in September. And he told me, he says, "Get a bat." He knew that everybody was here because it was close to home. So I go up and I'm facing Frank Larry. And my dad thought Frank Larry was one of the best. threw me a high slider. I got a base hit, my first major league hit. And I was just ecstatic. And my parents were all excited. And you ask any young kid when his best thrill, and that would be his first major league hit.
You kind of sell yourself short. You said you were very lucky. I mean, it really didn't take you long to start excelling. And you said 19 home runs because of the heat and nice ballpark. But, the first couple of games, you basically had one hit and nine at bats. But
Yeah,
then in your third game, you set a record in the league. You had 10 RBIs, all right, in a 15-3 win. That kind of puts a player on the map in his third professional game,
it sure
playing
did.
up. So what do you remember about that game? I mean, I think you had a grand slam in that game.
The
Crazy.
best thing about that, Mark, was when I got to third base. The last at bat, I think I got a double, and I ended up at third base. And Tony Perez, we broke in together. Standing, he said, "Jim, give us a break." And I started laughing. I said, "Tony, I don't even know what the heck I'm doing." I said, "I'm just swinging." And he said, "You had a great day." And I said, "Yes, thank you."
And the talent in that league that year was pretty amazing too, because at the end of that season, you had 283, 19 home runs, as you mentioned, 83 RBIs. Your first pro season, you're named to the postseason All-Star team with names like Rusty Staub, Tony Perez, Mel Stottlemyre, and your teammate Rico Petrocelli. When you had that type of success early on, how much confidence that give you? And then when the Red Sox tell you you're on, the major league roster, how much confidence and how much did that help your game at that point?
Well, it did, because I knew that I I was ready to play. I was ready to play in the game, and I got a tip my first year that I'll never forget, and I'll thank till I die. Eddie Popowski. He was our manager in Winston Salem. And just before we started the season, we went there for a couple of days, and then the season started. He called me in the office, and he said, "Jimmy, I want you to do me a favor." I said, "What's that, Pop?" He said, "I want you to hustle." I said, "Well, I hustle all the time." He says, "No, I want you to hustle." I says, "Well, what do you mean, Pop?" He says, "I want you to run to your position after every inning. When we go in the field, you hustle out there. And when the third out, you hustle back in the dugout." And I said, "Okay, Pop." He says, "Somebody's always watching." And I'll never forget that. He made that statement to me, and God love him. I love Pop. And what he said to me, it changed everything. I mean, from then on, I was bang, 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 hustling all the time. And I got criticized one time, and when I come up to the Red Sox with Billy Herman when he was up there, and he called me aside and he said, "You're showing your shrimpsy up." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, you're hustling and off the field." I said, "Billy, that's the way I was taught to play the game, and that's the way I'm going to play it. If you don't or don't agree with that, then take me out of the lineup." But I said, "I'm going to play that way as long as I can run."
And it's a
And
it's a
it was
reputation that sticks
it
with you
was
to this day.
successful for me.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's something that I never thought of doing. I mean, I was always running back and forth to your position, but he said, "Hustle, hustle, hustle." Okay. And I even when if I had a walk, right, and I'd run down to first base, I wouldn't trot, I would run. I mean, because that's what Pop wanted, and that's what got me to the big leagues. No
Oh,
question.
unbelievable. Another one of those amazing moments, you hear in your voice, not only, were you a ball player, but you also were a student of the game. And obviously your father loved the game as well. May 24th, 1963, before the Red Sox opened a 4-game series against, the Detroit Tigers at Tiger Stadium. You didn't play that night, but you get to meet one of your boyhood idols, which was Al Kaline. What was it about Al Kaline that made him your idol? And what do you recall about meeting him that night?
I used to watch him when he was playing. I was in the minor leagues at the time, but I was always watch him and watch how he played the outfield. I mean, he had a strong arm, and I always worked at trying to get a strong arm and accurate arm. And the day that I got a chance to meet him in Detroit, I walked up to him and I said, "Mr. Kaline," I said, "this is a pleasure for me to do this." He said, "Jim, it's Al. You don't call me Mr. Kaline." And from then on, the only thing that I wish I would have got, that picture was taken. I wish he would have signed it. I wish I would have had it signed. That picture, along with the picture I had with Ted Williams, I would love to have had both of those signatures. But, meeting a gentleman like that, and he was nothing but first class. And it just, I mean, I felt good. I felt like, boy, I belong. I belong here now when he says something like that to me.
Wow. So this is interesting also. September 25th, 1965, you get to have two at bats against a 58-year-old Satchel Paige. The second at bat that you had would end up being the last batter that the great Satchel Paige would ever face in his career. What do you recall about that? And the fact, he went 3 innings. If I remember correctly, he only gave up one hit. I know he had a strikeout, maybe two in that game. What was the feeling in the dugout watching a 58-year-old guy still being able to get major league batters out?
About it, Mark, is first of all, we didn't know what was going on when we went into Kansas City when we were playing that game in there. Finley was a big promoter as far as bringing, attractions in to draw people in the park. And when we were taking batting practice, I looked down the right field line and there's somebody in a rocking chair and a nurse standing there, and nobody knew what was going on. So we get in the clubhouse, and finally our traveling secretary says that they have a publicity deal where Satchel Paige is going to pitch 3 innings against you. And we thought, oh, okay. And we didn't know at the time how old he was. We knew that it was Satchel Paige, but I never knew how old he was. Well, I was the leadoff hitter. First time up, I grounded out. And then through the course of the 3 innings, we only got one hit, and that was by Carl Yastrzemski. It was a double. But the thing that was so good about him, Satchel Paige, was the fact that he still threw pretty hard. He's 58 years old, but he's still throwing the ball 80 to 85 miles an hour. But the thing about it was, Mark, that every pitch, you never seen it above the belt. Everything was down, 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 down. And I remember I never knew till later on that I was the last hitter to face him. It never even dawned on me. But the thing that stuck in my mind was the fact that I grounded out, and as I'm running to grab my glove, he grabs me by the arm, and it scared the living hell out of me. And he looked at me and he said, "Good luck, young man." And I thought, oh, my gosh, to have somebody of his stature, you know, commend me or at least wish me good luck. I mean, that's unbelievable. I've had some great stories in my playing days, but some of that stuff really stands out. And I sit here and I reminisce and think about it, and I just love it. Just
It's
love it.
it, it's an amazing 3-year run if you think about it. Having Ted Williams as your hitting instructor, meeting your boyhood idol, and facing Satchel Paige, that alone is enough. But the story continues as 69, pretty wild year for you as well, as you're part of two famous teams for two completely different reasons. You're a member of the 1969 expansion Seattle Pilots, a team that is remembered much more for Jim Bouton's stories in Ball 4 than their record. What do you recall about your time with the expansion pilots, and what were your thoughts when the book came out?
Well, going to an expansion team, I figured I'd get a chance to play quite a bit, but um, it didn't happen. I mean, I was there for a period of 6 weeks. I don't know how many games I played in. Joe Schultz was the manager, and my opinion of Joe Schultz wasn't very good because he didn't care if we won or lost. That's what was sad. And we had one situation where we were playing against the Baltimore Orioles, and they were throwing, I think, Palmer, and I was hitting, and we had our lineup. We had Mincher was hitting fourth against right-handers, and Davis hitting fourth. So before the game started, they switched pitchers. They put Cuellar in there and take Palmer. Palmer couldn't throw, so they put Cuellar in there. Now we got Davis hitting fourth and Mincher hitting third. And when uh, Joe didn't change the lineup, he left the same way. Well, when Davis come up, he hits a double, and of course, out comes Earl Weaver saying he's hitting out of lineup, and they found out that he was hitting out of turn. So we lose the game. After the game, Schultz comes in. He says, "My fault," and everybody looked around and said, "No shit, your fault." He says, the beer's cold, though. He was always worrying about having the beer cold. Got to have the Budweiser. So, I mean, I was there for 6 weeks. When they sent me out to, I don't know, Winnipeg, I think it was, AAA team. And when I left, I looked about and I said, geez, I didn't think I was this bad, but they're making a believer out of me. And I go to Winnipeg, and I'm there for 2 weeks. I hit 520, and the Met scout, or the Met general manager, was there, and they bought me from Seattle, and that was a treat for me. The only bad part of it was that I had my family, and we had to drive all the way back from Winnipeg. I had to bring them home here to Michigan before I got down to AAA ball, which was in North Carolina.
Interesting. The Mets purchased you, and the day you joined the Met club, the Mets were 4.5 games behind the Chicago Cubs, but in the middle of that historic drive. After 2 pinch hitting appearances, one is a defensive replacement, you get your first starting action September 12th, which is a doubleheader, which is a pretty famous doubleheader. You get into the lineup because at that point, I think Cleon Jones was hurting, and I think it was the Jewish holiday, so Archamsky was actually sitting out that year, obviously Yom Kippur. You played both games of that doubleheader, which was the doubleheader that the Mets won by identical scores of 1-0, with
Yep.
Jerry Koosman getting the RBI in the first game and Don Cardwell getting the RBI in the second game. 2 shutouts, both won by RBIs by the pitchers. What do you remember about, being part of that pennant run?
The time I was there, the thing that impressed me more than anything was, as players, with our pitching that we had there, we knew if we got 3 runs, we're going to win the game. I mean, that's how good the pitching was with the New York Mets. Hitting wise, we were fair. We didn't have a lot of home run hitters, but we had hitters that were productive. But when you get a pitcher like Seaver out there on the mound, to me, he was the best I ever played with. No question in my mind, he was the best. He was so consistent, and he would get so upset if he didn't perform the way that he thought he should perform. I mean, he was just an absolute gunner out there. He just, that was his way, and everybody could see this. And this was, I mean, it was the biggest, probably one of the biggest thrills I ever had was playing behind him defensively. I mean, to just watch him. I'm standing in center field, and he's just throwing bullets, and everything is knee high. And um, he passed away too soon. Such a great man. I mean, I was lucky. I mean, I can't thank God enough for all of the wonderful memories that I had of playing baseball.
Talk about a guy who passed away too soon. You played for some really good managers along the way, both in the majors and the minors. You got a chance to play for Gil Hodges. Where does Gil rank among the managers that you played for?
Him and Alvin Dark were the two best I ever played for. Gil was very quiet. He was not, and so was Al Dark. They were both very quiet. But if they told you something, I mean, you better listen. And Gil never got. I never saw Gil get upset. I saw Alvin get upset a few times, but never saw Gil get upset. And he was just very quiet, would sit there in the dugout, and he would, if he wanted to tell somebody something, you better be listening. Alvin Dark, to me, was like my second father. When I joined that club in '65, I got traded to Kansas City from Boston. And he called me in and he said, here's what we're going to do. He says, you're going to play against right-handed pitching. Joe Nostick will play against left-handed pitching. I said, Skip, whatever you want to do is fine with me. The thing about it was, when I wasn't playing, he'd come down to me. I don't know why, but he would come down to me and say, what do you think we should do in this situation, Jimmy? And I said, Alvin, you're the skipper. He says, I just want your opinion. And his daughter is on my Facebook. We're very good friends, and he was the best. And him and Hodges, no question, two of the best that I was fortunate enough to play with.
So you're part of both the 1969 World Championship Mets and the 1973 National League Championship Mets. I believe you have a 1973 National Championship ring, but not the 1969 World Series ring. You and I have spoken about this, but can you share a little bit about that with our audience?
Well, when I joined them, and like I say, Hodges told me, he said, you're going to be playing as much as I can get you in there, but defensively, I want you to play in the outfield. He says, we'll get Cleon out of there, and I want you to be in center field if we're ahead in the seventh inning. And I said, whatever you want to do, Skip, is fine with me. Well, I got in probably, I don't know, I probably got in 12, 15 games defensively for him. And I saved 3 or 4 games for him. I remember I got hung up in the weeds there in Comiskey, or in Chicago's Cubs Stadium there, when they had the vines out in left field. Everybody was laughing, but I got hung up trying to catch the ball. But after the season was over with, Gil had called me in the office and he said, Jimmy, he says, we need another pitcher, so I'm taking you off the major league, after the World Series roster. I said, Gil, that's fine. I said, I've enjoyed myself for the 5 weeks here. It's just been a big thrill for me. And I said, I enjoy playing here and being part of this and winning the National League Championship. I said that there's nothing better. So after the season's over with, they played in the World Series and they won. And about a week after that, I get a check in the mail, a World Series check. And I looked at it and it was $100. And I told my wife, I said, no, I'm sending this back. So I sent it back to the ball club and I said, please buy yourselves a case of beer and keep the change. But it's something that I always wanted, Mark. I mean, you ask any athlete when they have a chance to win a ring. I don't care what kind of ring. I mean, I won a ring in Class B or won a ring in Class A, but I said the ring that you got from the major leagues, that's the big deal.
It's also interesting, 73, you get a chance to play, with Willie Mays. What was that like?
Oh, great man. Well, was he a nice man? I had spring training with him when I got traded, when I was over with San Francisco in spring training, but then they had sent me down, or traded me, I guess, to the Mets or something. But anyway, Willie was funny. I mean, he was so sincere, and you'd sit there and talk to him. I loved talking to him on the bench, in dugout there, because he was always telling you about hitting and everything else. How you should do this, how to play the outfield. I mean, I learned a lot from him from the time I was there. But there was one instance that it was so comical that we were in a rain delay, and I'm sitting around there and the guys are all sitting around there. And I says, "What's this? I'm going to get Willie." So I went over to Willie and I said, "Willie, do you know I'm a magician?" And he said, "Goose, you're not a magician." I said, "Yeah, I am." He says, "What do you mean you're a magician?" I said, "Willie, I can change an apple into a peach." And Willie says, "Yeah, right." So I says, "Okay." So I go get a towel. I put the apple in, and I, I held the apple in my hand. I give the other part to Willie. I says, "No," or no, I give the apple to Willie. I says, "Now, what I want you to do is I want you to twist this real tight." So he starts twisting, twisting, twisting. And he says, "I thought you're changing this apple to a peach." So I took it and put it down by my testicles. I said, "Now, isn't that a peach?" he, he never laughed so hard in all his life. And everybody around us was cracking up. But I did stuff like that, with you can do it. We could do it back then. We had to break the monotony a little bit of sitting around. So it was a treat, and I had fun with him. But he was a great man. God, he was fun to be around.
So, lastly, before I turn it over to the Zoom room, because I'm sure they all want to ask a bunch of questions as well. Last week we had Art Champsky on, and we talk about the era that you guys played in, and Art basically his entire career, other than maybe 8 games of it, was spent exclusively in the National League. You conversely spent more than twice the amount of your career in the American League as the National League. Who were some of the best pitchers you faced in your career, and who was the best athlete that you ever played with or against?
Probably the best pitcher that I ever played with. Is that what you're talking about? Played with or
With
against?
or against, either one.
The best I ever played with was Seaver, no question. The best I was scared against was Sam McDowell.
Sonny Sam.
And there was a situation in Cleveland, and we were playing, and Alvin Dark says, "Go hit." And I'm thinking, "Oh, God, I got to go hit against McDowell." So I go up there, and I can't remember who was catching.
Joe Askew, maybe?
No, it wasn't Askew who's ever catching. And I said, "This isn't funny. Just have him throw it in here, will you please?" So the first pitch he throws the curveball, strike one. So I said, he looked at me and he said, or the second pitch he threw was a knuckleball. And I turned around and I said, "What is he doing?" He says, "Well, he's working on a couple things." He says, "What do you want?" I said, "Throw me a fastball one time." So, okay. So he throws it. Duke Sims was behind the plate.
Oh, okay.
Duke says, "Here comes." He throws me a fastball. I get a base hit to right field. Sam McDowell is screaming at me a little bit. He says, "How can you hit that? How can you hit that?" And he's just scoffing around the mound. Pretty soon, Duke walks out there and he says, "What's wrong with you, Sam?" He says, "How come that little son of a bitch hit me?" He says, "Because I told him what was coming." I'll never forget. And Duke and I talk about it all. We talked about it all the time. First time a catcher had ever told me what was coming, but it was funny. And McDowell's a great guy. He's on my Facebook. We talk once in a while, and he always reminisces about that situation. But I mean, those stories, Mark. He just, I sit here and I think about him, and I thought, my gosh, how lucky was I?
Unbelievable. And who was the best athlete that you played with or against in
Oh,
your career?
the best I ever played. There was a few of them, but the kid that really I enjoyed playing with was Tony Conigliaro with the Red Sox. When I come up, and he had just come up after I had got up there, and we roomed together on the road. Really a nice kid. I mean, just a first class, and he just he was he was built for Fenway Park. I mean, and he just was a good hitter in Fenway Park. And to this day, I found out I got traded away from them. I went to Kansas City. Well, then he got hit by Hamilton in the face. And I find out from a couple of Hamilton's teammates who were on my Facebook. I had talked to them about that. I said, "What happened?" They said, "He threw at him." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Because that's the way Hamilton was." Nobody on the team liked Hamilton. I mean, he was just a guy that none of his players liked him. And they was hoping somebody'd go after him. But it was a meant pitch. It was a pitch that
Wow.
was, that, and it ruined Tony's career. He was never the same after that. And it was sad because he was such a great athlete. You know, I'm lucky. I'm playing out in the outfield between him and Yastrzemski. I mean, it doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
And playing in Fenway Park. I just loved playing in Fenway Park. When I joined the club in '65, I joined them at All-Star break because two of the outfielders, Lenny Green and Gary Geiger, had both got injured. And when I got there, Billy Herman says, "You're my center fielder." And I said, "Okay." He says, "You're playing every day." And I said, "Wow." So I played 81 games for him in center field. And I mean, it was a thrill, playing with these ball players and getting a chance to play in probably the best park that I enjoyed playing in, Fenway, and it was just classy.
Yeah, you wonder what that team would have been like if Tony C didn't get hurt.
Oh,
Billy Canigliero's career probably would have been different if his brother was with him the whole time. Yeah, Boomer Scott that they traded away. That could have been some unbelievable team. The same thing with the Indians. You talk about Sam McDowell, but they also had Tiant and Sonny Siebert at that time also.
yeah.
And yeah, so that was some pitching staff as well. All right, this is my favorite part of the night. I get to take a rest and listen to the great questions from the room. Damon, wow, he's fast on the draw. He's got his hand up. He's lightning quick. All right, Damon, go ahead, unmute and ask your question.
Hey, Mark, thanks again for having me on. Jim, it's a pleasure. Love listening to your stories.
Well, thank you.
Uh, I have a couple for you if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
First one, when you came to New York to play for the Mets, did it take some like getting used to, or did you just jump right in and just love it from day one playing there? The fans were very passionate, as you know.
I enjoyed the team, the players there. The guys that I played with. I mean, it was nice. It was enjoyable playing there, and like I said, playing for Hodges, it was great. I was lucky. I that in '73 I got to play the almost the whole year. And with the team that we had there, I mean, the pitching was outstanding. We just didn't have enough hitting. But it was a good time. I mean, I enjoyed New York.
In '68, you played for the A's. Could you tell us, do you have any stories about Charles Finley? And what'd you think of him?
The groundskeeper out there, George Toma, he'd get so upset with the stuff that would be going on out there. I mean, that field was the best, probably the best field that we had ever had to play on. I mean, it was just everything was pristine. And he'd have these farmer nights where he'd have these animals running around out there, pigs and that, and people chasing them, and he would give them gifts, if they could catch these pigs. But he really messed up the field, and George would get so upset. But Finley was all about, we didn't draw a whole lot of people there. And it got even worse when we went to Oakland. I mean, that was terrible. But Kansas City, I loved Kansas City, a beautiful, beautiful area, beautiful town. And my family was there, and we really enjoyed the chance that we had to play there. And I missed it, but when we moved to Oakland, I was glad to get out of there. I was there for a short period of time, and that was enough. Yeah.
Okay, Steve, go ahead.
So I've been going to New York Mets fantasy camp for the past 4 years, and had the honor of playing for two of your former teammates, Ron Swoboda and Duffy Dyer. And I'm wondering if you had any funny stories about those guys, especially Duffy, because he's quite the character.
Yeah, so Boda's a beauty. He was he, I remember the one game we play. I can't remember who we were playing against, but he hit 2 home runs that we win the game. And but he was a gung ho, and Duffy was quiet. Duffy was a real quiet individual, but boy, what a hell of a catcher he was. He really was good, and he was so consistent. And I mean, this I was lucky to play with guys like that. It was fun. We had so much fun playing, and I just I miss those times. And you'd think about them, and you thought, wow, what a great life I had, but those guys were great teammates of mine.
And it's funny you talk about Duffy and how he's quiet. He definitely, from what I've observed of him over the years, he really kind of internalizes everything. But if something he's unhappy with, he lets you know, and
Oh
then
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
when and once in a while he'll just crack a joke that you had no idea, didn't see it
Yeah, he just,
coming.
I mean, like I say, he was quiet, but when he got going, stay out of his way.
Yeah. That's great. And lastly, so since came to the Mets both at times where they were competing for a World Series, uh, did you feel like you hit the lottery by that happening?
No question. No,
Yeah.
there's so many players that play the game and never get a chance to play in a championship or on a team that gets into the World Series. And like I say, I was so fortunate to be at the right spot at the right time. When I come up in '69, I just loved the time up there in '69. We just it would to see the fans. They got so enthused with the team, and then when we end up winning the championship that night, I remember the people just flooding the field. And I mean it was fun to watch, and I was excited. I was happy that they won. I was hoping that I would get a deserved ring, but that never
Yeah.
happened. But um, the thrill of being in that and the memories of playing at that time when the game was so much fun as compared to what it is now. It's a little different. I mean, the stuff that they do now, we couldn't do that. We couldn't even talk to the opposing players, or you'd get fined by the league. Now they hug each other, and
Right.
I mean, the
Got
game
it
has
up.
completely changed. I've lost a lot of interest. I follow the Red Sox because they originally signed me, and I follow the Tigers here, and they're starting to come around. They've made some changes, but I don't watch a lot of it anymore. I just because there's so much crazy stuff, And I give you an example. When we played, if you got hit or somebody on another team hit you, we would go back and hit somebody on that team. And we had a situation when I was with Montreal. Gene Mauch was the manager, and I think Stanky was the manager of the Cubs. And we had a situation where we started the 3-game series, and we have a team meeting, and Mark stands up and he's talking, and he tells Steve Renko, he says, when Sano comes up, I want you to hit him. And we're all looking, why are we doing this? The first game of the series. And Sano was hitting fourth. Well, Fergie Jenkins is pitching for them. So we get up, we get them out 1, 2, 3. I come up to bat. I'm the leadoff hitter. I get a base hit. We go through our whole lineup. Well, in the second, we don't score. In the second inning, Sano comes up. Rinko drills him. Because Mark said if you don't drill him, it costs you $200. And Rinko hits him. So when I come up the next time, Fergie's pitching. He nails me in the hip. and I'm running down to first base. I get down there and
Ernie, Ernie
Ernie
Banks.
Banks. I said, Ernie, what's going on? He said, baseball, Jimmy. And I thought, this is nuts. Anyway, I get all the way around the third, and the third out is made, and I come by home plate, and Fergie's standing there. He says, you okay, Jim? I said, Fergie, why me? He says, because you're the only one that got a hit. And he says, you guys hit Santo. He says, we had to retaliate, so I hit you. But he says, I threw at your hip. I said, thank God you didn't throw at my head. But I mean, that's the way it was back then. Nowadays, these kids, they hit a home run, they flip the bat, they dance around the bases. You did that back in our time, and you're going to get nailed, because the pitcher feels bad enough that he gave up the home run, and you're showing him up by playing around the bases. It's just the game has changed. It's just not. I don't know. And then now they're talking about they putting these robot people or guys that in the minor leagues where they're going to challenge the pitch, and they're going to have it on that the managers in the minor leagues can question whether it was a strike or not. And I mean, what's going on? It don't make sense.
What was the last game you've attended at a stadium?
Last time I think was about probably 8 years ago in Fenway. I went up and signed autographs up there, and I went up there, when I played, they didn't have seats up in left field. They just had a net. And we got a chance to go up there, and they treated me first class. And I had a friend of mine with me, and we got to go down on the field. And he says, I can't believe I'm standing here in Fenway Park on the field. I said, well, enjoy it, Chucky, because it's a one-day deal. But he was a big Red Sox fan too, and he's a good friend of mine. But he was so excited to go up there to Boston.
All right, Sal, I'm sure you got some. Sal is our resident collector. He's got tons of stuff, and I think I might stump him. I don't know if he's actually got any Jim Gosger memorabilia, but I always say that, and somehow Sal manages to pull something out of his hat. What do you got, Sal?
Well, today we're going to remember the Seattle Pilot years for Jim.
I love that card. Yeah, that's a beautiful card.
I love the jersey.
I do love those jerseys and the hat. The hat was awesome.
I do have one of the hats. Yeah. So,
Jim, well, have them send it along. Send it along. I'd be happy to sign it for you.
Yeah. So that's one thing I do want to say. Jim does sign, through the mail. He does ask for a donation to what is St. Jude's. Jim, what is the charity?
St. Jude. I tell you what I did today. This friend of mine, I had put my Oakland jersey up that I had here. I auctioned off my gloves, 2 gloves I had from back when I was playing, and my Red Sox uniform and my Met uniform. I had auctioned them off, and I had got a total of almost $4,000 for all of those gifts, for all of those. Well, I had this Oakland shirt, and I just got it sent back to the gentleman that bid on it. And I just sent a check today for $275 to St. Jude Hospital for my kids.
How did I miss the Met one? Damn.
Yeah, I do that. I mean, I so enjoy working, doing stuff for the kids. And I'm lucky I can do it. I mean, with my injuries and everything, I've been taken care of money-wise. I don't have any problems. But I do donate to St. Jude, and I ask if anybody wants an autograph. I'm happy to sign it. I love signing autographs, and I still get cards in the mail. I mean, sometimes 5-6 cards a week, from people who want autographs. And I ask $5, but all money goes to St. Jude. That's my favorite charity, and I feel good about it. I put it up on Facebook today that I did mine. I sent the money to St. Jude. I've got so many nice compliments, and it's something I wanted to do. I love kids, and kids are my animals. That's my whole life.
Jim, you're my kind of guy, because I'm a big St. Jude supporter. Every year I do a radiothon, and we raise money for them. My favorite thing. I'm part of a baseball card group. So I'll get the information from Mark, and I'm sure you're going to get flooded with donation.
tell the people that everything goes to St. Jude. I don't keep a penny of it. I don't need it anymore, but I enjoy doing things for those kids. I feel so sorry for them. I don't know I'm Catholic,
Mhm.
and I say 12 rosaries a day, and all the prayers go to all my friends and especially those kids in St. Jude Hospital, because I feel so sorry for them, I hope someday they find a cure for cancer,
Oh, I'm all
for those
about that.
kids.
And the other one, I have one other surprise for you. Your rookie card is one of the most expensive cards in the 1963 set. Now, if you see here, yeah,
I
see,
don't know how much
Can't
it's
really
worth.
see.
Now, some guy had come on
yeah, see
and
that?
he said, I have the rookie card. I have it here in pristine condition. That picture right there. And he said, Jim, he says, somebody paid $63,000 for that card. I said, what? I said, tell him I'll give him a deal for 50,000.
Well, there was one guy on it that kind of messed up the whole thing. It's Willie Stargell,
Willie Stargell.
right
What a
below it.
nice man he was.
Yeah. Well, I like this part better because
Well, if you want it signed, you send it along, my friend. I'd
I
be
will
happy to do it for you.
definitely do. And you said it's 5 per signature, right?
Yeah, yes. I'll
Yeah.
get you the address, Sal, and
Yeah.
I'll send it along.
We're going to send a whole lot of cards and help a whole lot of kids.
Absolutely.
Because that's
You,
my
you
favorite.
know, in speaking to you, this is what I love about doing this is we get to hear all these old time stories, but your career, like I just keep on thinking like it's the Woody Allen movie Zelig or Forrest Gump. It's just these so many unbelievable experiences. Have you ever thought about writing a book? Because you got Ted Williams, you got Al Kaline,
There's a gentleman in town. There was a gentleman in Kansas City that was gonna wanted to write me write my book, write my life. He sent me a tapes, about 15 tapes, and he said, now start from when you were younger, all the way up through high school, college, and professional ball. And I said, okay. So I wrote, and he says, I want some stories too. And I put all those together, sent everything back to him. Poor gentleman died about
oh,
2 months ago.
Mm.
So Mandy, the girl that was doing all the work on it as far as publishing it and getting it published and everything, she sent it all back to me. Well, a gentleman in town here was a sports writer. He's now writing a book on my life,
great.
and he's been calling me every day. I give him all the tapes that I had from this gentleman from Kansas City, from the Kansas City area, and he's doing the book of my life. And I said I'd be happy to to see something like that. I mean, I've had a great career. I've had a lot of fun, and I said the guy when he was writing the book, he said, what should we name the book? I says, let's make it Promises Made. He says, what do you mean? I says, because my dad, when I signed the contract, my first contract, he said, do me a favor. And I said, what's that, Dad? He said, don't neglect an autograph. And I said, what do you mean, Dad? He said, because those kids or whoever sends you an autograph means that you mean something to them. And he says, I want you to promise me. And to this day, I've never neglected an autograph. I mean, I've always done that. And he said, let's make the book Promises Made. So that was supposed to be the name of the book, but it never, what this new gentleman here in town wants to name it, I'm going to try and get it named Promises Made, because that's something I think about my dad all the time, and I feel good about it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
One question I have for you. I remember you a lot with the Expos in 1970. Tell me about the experience playing in Montreal, and because they were new at that point, and you played with Staub and Ron Fairley what about those that year?
Wait, Sal, if you're gonna bring up the Montreal Expos and the whole Jarry Park, experience, you have to mention John Bacabella.
He was in there.
Well, you know what's fun about playing in Montreal? First of all, I love the city, beautiful city, and I took my family up there. I had my daughter and my son. I only had the two at the time, and I took them. They went up there, and we stayed just outside of Montreal. In fact, the young lady that was my babysitter is on my Facebook, Terry Shirelli, and we talk all the time. But I enjoyed Montreal. I enjoyed the park. It was fun playing up there. The funny thing about it was when we first started, the fans, they were clapping on a fly ball. They didn't understand. They didn't understand the game. Like they didn't understand baseball as a game. They thought a fly ball is a base hit or something, I guess. But they figured it out real quick. But we had, I don't know if you remember, the heck was his name, our third base coach, different signs for take, bunt, hit, run, steal. And we we had Don Zimmer was the coach at third base, and he was given the signs. Well, we had a situation where Mark put the steal on, or he put the hit and run on, and Zimmer gave the guy the steal. Well, the guy got thrown out at second base. So after the game, Mark comes in and he's screaming at Zimmer, "That's going to cost you $500." So Zimmer, he's sitting there and finally gives him money. Well, a couple of days later, Mark comes in with this nice brand new suit on. And he says, "Hey, Zim, how you like this new outfit?" And Zimmer just kind of looked at him and says, "Yeah, it looks nice." He says, "Well, you paid for it." Stuff like that was funny back then. But Mark was good. He was a good manager, but he didn't like the guys didn't like him too well, because if you weren't going well, you might as well go sit in the corner, because he was that way. I mean, he was a stickler. And I remember I had my socks on, and he come up one day and says, "Change those socks." I said, "Skip, I've had them on for 2 months." He says, "Yeah, but the stirrups are too high. Go get another pair." I says, "Okay, whatever." But I mean, that's the way it was with him. But I loved Montreal. Boy, it was a beautiful city.
That's awesome. Thanks a lot, Jim. And you'll be
Jim,
here.
thanks so much for your time tonight. Just great stories, and I look forward to the book. I can't wait.
If it does come out, Mark, I'll guarantee you'll get a copy, no question, because it's something that I've always thought about. I never really thought a lot about it, but when this guy started on the book, I thought, wow, this is fun doing this.
Yeah.
And the girl had just sent me back all the tapes that I did when he passed away, and I gave them to the gentleman that's doing my book here and now, and he's going through all the tapes and everything. In fact, she just sent me a notice on Facebook 2 days ago. She said, "Jim, there'll be something coming in the mail. All the pictures that he had of you and your baseball pictures, I'm sending them back to you." I says, "Mandy, I appreciate that." So I'm supposed to get that any day. That's
so
nice.
If you don't go with Promises Made, the thing that I just keep on thinking about every time I speak to you is just a baseball life well lived. That's, I think that sums up your career. I just think the way you held yourself throughout your career and post-career, and what you continue to do for the game, baseball life well lived. And I appreciate you doing this tonight. I'm sure everyone in the Zoom room does. And if you're watching this on the video afterwards, you can be part of our Zoom room shows going forward and ask questions like Sal and Steve and Damon did tonight, simply by going to KINER'S joining up to the mailing list. And each week we do this, and love to have you guys as part of the audience. So again, Jim, thanks so much for your time tonight.
Mark, I can't thank you guys enough, and please keep in touch, will you?
Absolutely. I will.
All right, my friend. Tell everybody I said hello.